Hi there, AP Stats Cats. Welcome to Unit 1, Part 2 highlight video. This is about Chapter 5, where we were first introduced to the normal distribution. And I am trying to keep the unit numbers consistent with what AP is doing and what StatsMedic is doing, even though in PowerSchool I would have probably called this Unit 2 because it was technically our second unit test. So if you're just wondering, I'm trying to stick with the consistency to match StatsMedic and AP because I think that will make more difference now. I don't think you're really going back and looking at first semester grades and wondering, oh, but she called it Unit 2 then. So hopefully that helps. If you have any questions, let me know. Couple of main things here. This was a shorter unit, so hopefully this video will also be shorter. We'll see. If you have a distribution that is symmetric and unimodal, you can consider it to be approximately normal. It's difficult for us with our, just taking a look at it visually to be able to say, oh yeah, that's approximately normal versus, oh no, that's not, without this little secondary option. So if you think symmetric, it looks about the same on both sides, and unimodal, one major peak, then that should be approximately normal. There's not really a way for it to be skewed unimodal leading to approximately normal, so you don't have to worry about that. Keep in mind that when you have an approximately normal curve, you should have about 3 standard deviations on either side of the mean before you get to the tail. There is a little bit left underneath the tail or underneath the curve in the tail beyond that, but it's approximately 3. It's not perfect. This leads us to the empirical rule, which we also call the 68, 95, 99.7 rule. And as you can see, that, just as a reminder, that states that you have about 68% of the data falling between 1 standard deviation below and 1 standard deviation above the mean, 95% of the data within 2 standard deviations, and almost everything, 99.7% of the data within 3 standard deviations from the mean. Again, this is not perfect. This is approximate. So while this was great when we had numbers that fell right on the idea of mu plus 1 sigma or mu minus 2 sigmas, it doesn't work for every single case, which is why we started to standardize our data. So a couple of other things. We have this great big formula here, which is probably the most important formula in stats. We eventually started comparing things that weren't really on the same scale to begin with, so we had to standardize the variables. Well, a standard normal curve is approximately normal, so unimodal and symmetric, with a mean of 0 and a standard deviation of 1. When you take 2 different variables that can't otherwise really be compared and you put them onto the same scale by standardizing, you then will use this formula to be able to see which one is better, which one is lower, which one has a higher probability, that kind of thing. For those of you who participated in the AP Classroom FRQ problems, we were looking at birds, and based on the data we had, was it more likely that a bird was going to come from the northern region or the southern region of the places we were looking at? And we used normal probabilities to make that determination. So how do we use this formula again? Well, the main variable we're looking at, the main variable of interest is x. We're always going to see how far away is it from the mean. If it's above the average, it will have a positive z-score. If it is below average, it will have a negative z-score. But then this is all still relative to the standard deviation we're looking at. So take the variable of interest minus mu and then divide by the standard deviation of the distribution. It's okay for z to be positive or negative. If it's 0, that means that your observation fell right squarely in the middle. Based on this, we will also use some calculator shortcuts to be able to find either the area under the curve, or if we need to find the z-score that goes along with an area. I have the calculator hints written here for you in case you wanted to follow along. Also, I'm going to attach this document so that you can print it out if that would be helpful to you. But right now, I'm going to move over to the calculator. So if you could do that as well, please. What I'm going to start out with is finding the probability that z is greater than 2. Well, 2 standard deviations above the mean. Let's see what we know based on our empirical rule. If this is 0, this is 1, this is 2, and this is 3. So we've got -1 here, -2 here, and -3 here. If we were to take a look at the data between -2 and +2 as our z-scores, that would be 95% or so. The thing is that that leaves 5% total outside of the range, and we have to split that up equally into two different tails. So that's about 2.5% on the left and about 2.5% on the right. So we're expecting an answer of about 2.5%, about 0.025. It's not going to be perfect because, again, the empirical rule is not ideal. It's just an approximation. But let's see what the calculator says. All right, if we wanted to find a probability that z is greater than 2, we'll go to second vars, and then the two different buttons that we really are interested in here are numbers 2 and 3. We will never, ever use normal PDF, never. So go to normal CDF, which the C stands for cumulative, so it's a cumulative distribution function, and that really means that we're looking for the area between two target boundaries. So since we're looking for what's greater than 2 standard deviations above the mean, that means our lower boundary is 2, and our upper boundary is way off to the side, some huge number off to the right, so I'm going to call it a 100. And then I'm going to keep my mean at 0 and sigma at 1. Now, technically, if you wanted to do this and skip the idea of z-scores, you could use your lower x boundary and your upper x boundary and input the mu and sigma from the original problem. That would be okay. It's not my favorite. To be quite honest, I like always going through z-scores because it shows that we understand the whole process. It also is a way of signifying to whoever's looking at our work that we know that we have a normal distribution instead of having to write it in a sentence. It also is more thorough. Having said that, if you all of a sudden have a brain fart on the day of the AP exam, and you know that, but you don't remember this, go ahead and use it. I mean, I'd rather you get something right than just have to, make it all up. Having said that, z-score is an awesome way to show that you know what you're doing. So I'm going to go ahead down to paste, and maybe if I can ever get, whoops, except that it lost my 0. Sorry about that. My fingers are too big. Okay, so now when we go ahead and take a look, remember, we think this should be about 2.5%, and sure enough, 0.0228 is awfully close to 0.025. So that's just another way of taking a look at how you can find that tail probability. If you want to find out what's between two different boundaries, you could also do the same thing by going to second vars, normal CDF, and let's say what's between, I don't know, a z of -1 and a z of +2. We could do the same thing. This is just what's between your boundaries. You're putting your lower boundary and your upper boundary in there, and it's 0.8186. Okay, well, that's good. If you think about it, according to the 68, 95, 99.7 rule, between z of -1 and z of 0, we should have about half of 68%, 34%. Plus, if we're going from z equals 0 to z equals 2, you should have half of 95%. So 95 divided by 2, put that all together. It's not perfect, but it's pretty darn close. So that's just another way of showing what you have. The normal CDF calculations will be more exact than the others. Last but not least, what if you want to go in the opposite direction? What if you know the area to the left of a boundary and you want to find the boundary itself? Go to second vars. We're doing the opposite in math, which means we're using the inverse function. So go to inverse norm. Now on my particular screen, it shows left, center, and right as options. I'm going to teach it with left because that's what all calculators can do. If you really want to customize yours to center or right, go for it. But I'm always going to go to left. And by the way, if you're ever using the inverse t function, you would have to also focus on left that way as well. So in this particular case, I'm interested in the boundary that separates, let's say, the lower 15% of the data. So the area to the left of my boundary is going to be 15% or 0.15. I'm going to still look for the z-score, so I'm keeping my mu at 0 and my sigma at 1. My tail is the left-hand tail because I'm basically saying where is there 15% to the left of this boundary. So if I go ahead to paste, then it will tell me that the boundary is at -1.036. So back to the screen, what this is really saying is if I have a normal distribution and I'm looking for the place where 15% of the data is to the left of my boundary, that's going to be at z equals, what did we say it was, negative 1.036. All right, there it is, sorry. Z equals negative 1.03, oops, holy cow, 1.036. And hopefully that makes sense that that would have to be a negative z-score because it is to the left of center. Disclaimer, my graph is not drawn to scale. It probably should be a lot closer to the middle. But I hope that that helps for now. Sorry, I'm a little bit over the 10-minute mark. Go back and watch whatever part you need to. And again, if you need more help, let me know, or check out the AP videos. Next time I'll come to you with Unit 2, where we'll be talking about what happens when you have two variables. Have a great one.